Welcome to the ThePPod.
Okay, hello and welcome everybody to the ThePPod, the partnership podcast from the Somerset Safeguarding Children Partnership. Now, as you know, we're really keen to explore all aspects of partnership working and in relation to safeguarding children. And today we're going to be exploring about young carers and specifically what is a young carer, what do we mean by that, and what support is in place for young carers in Somerset. So I'm really pleased to be joined in the studio today by Suzie Figg and Mel Bicknell. Suzie, Mel, do you want to say a quick hello?
I'm Suzie Figg. I'm one of the team leaders in the Family Intervention Service, part of Wider Children's Services, and I'm also thematic lead for young carers.
Lovely. Thanks, Suzie. And yourself, Mel?
I'm Mel Bicknell, and I'm the project coordinator for the Young Carers in Schools Award.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, both of you. Thanks for taking the time to come out and see us today. So, as I say, we're going to be talking about young carers, and I know both of you are very heavily involved in this area. So, Suzie, can we just start off with yourself, just kind of setting the scene really about what is a young carer? What does that actually mean?
So a young carer is a child under the age of 18 who has some form of caring responsibility for anybody who lives in the family home. So that can be for a sibling, it can be for a parent or a step-parent, or for a grandparent that's living in the family home, or indeed any person that's actually living in the family home. So caring responsibilities could be physical caring responsibilities, so helping the family with tasks and jobs, but it could actually be emotional support for a sibling, perhaps a child with autism, so helping them to regulate, helping them to manage their daily routines in a house. So it's anything over and above you would expect a child to be doing in a family without those needs.
And it's, I think it's an area, it can be a bit challenging sometimes, isn't it, to sort of identify who does have young caring responsibilities and who doesn't. And I'm thinking particularly around the definition around young carers, including sort of supporting the physical needs, but also the emotional needs, mental health needs, and also drug and alcohol needs of parents.
Yeah, so needs in a home can be very varied. So sometimes it's very easy to spot a young carer. So if you've got a sibling in the household who is a wheelchair user, who has multiple medical needs, it's very easy to identify a young carer. But if you have an adult in the household who perhaps is using substances or alcohol, and their ability to parent and to manage the household can come and go according to those particular presenting needs at any given time, yes, it is sometimes a challenge to actually identify what is a young carer and what is actually a parent being neglectful within a family home. But I think we have to look at it as a case-by-case basis. So anything, as I say, where a child is doing over and above what you would expect a child without those presenting needs in the home could be constituted as a young carer.
Have you got any examples of that, about sort of what might be seen as sort of inappropriate for a child to be expected to do?
Yeah, so the legal definition for inappropriate care is if you are caring for somebody in your home and it prevents you from accessing education because you're needed at home for either the care of an adult or a child in that home, and something that stops you building friendships with your other peers. So that would be inappropriate or excessive care. Children aren't supposed to do personal care such as bathing or toileting. They're not supposed to administer medication because obviously there's a risk if you're a child and you're handling medication that could be harm to yourself. Physical lifting. So if you've got, say, a parent who is bedbound and you end up being involved in lifting that adult, that could be damaging to you as a child. And children also shouldn't actually be maintaining the family budget. So if that adult in the home is not able to maintain the family budget because of their own needs, that would be considered excessive care, and a full assessment of family needs would need to be completed. And then we've got a final one, which is considered inappropriate care, but I think it meets a very grey area, and that's the emotional support for an adult in the family home, because arguably any person with additional needs in the home or any child with additional needs in the home, there's going to be an emotional impact on everybody in that home.
Brilliant. Thank you, Suzie. And just for either of you, I know obviously young carers face quite a number of challenges, but what are sort of some of the unique challenges that young carers may face?
So I think one of the very common consequences of additional caring responsibilities is that child not accessing education or having missed educational periods. So perhaps if you're having to walk siblings to another school and that other school is a distance from your own, quite often the child then doesn't turn up at school on time or doesn't turn up at all. And we also have children who are afraid to go to school because they're really worried that perhaps mum's going to have an epileptic fit whilst they're away, and who is going to manage that situation. So you quite often get children becoming school phobic because of their concerns that something will happen whilst they're away, or that something will happen to a sibling and they won't be told about it because they're considered a child. And then you get this emotional impact on the child and anxiety rising. So yes, there are a lot of unique challenges in being a young carer.
And I think that thing about impact, that's the key bit, isn't it? And I know when we'll talk about sort of assessing the needs of young carers in a moment, but bringing it back to that impact, the so what all the time for this child is this is the situation, but actually this is what the impact is, this is what it means. And
I think impact can be as simple as actually missing time with your peers. You know, you're needed at home, you're afraid of actually not being available for whoever you're supporting in the home. So you're not able to develop peer friendships in the way others might, as well as actually perhaps needing to undertake physical tasks in the home, such as cooking meals for the rest of the family, or doing the washing for the family, or helping your siblings with their homework whilst perhaps not doing your own. So, yeah, very varied the needs.
Thanks, Suzie. Mel, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think just touching on what Suzie just said, so having gone to some schools recently and met with some young carers, it comes up quite a lot that they feel quite isolated, and it is the social interaction side that they feel they're missing out on. So they don't feel like they can do after school clubs. They don't feel like they can go to their peers' houses and do the normal things that children of their age do. They often feel as if they have to go straight home and they can't commit to doing a lot of the things that they maybe would like to. So I think it's kind of the social aspect that they just feel different. And I think that's what we want to try and avoid.
I was just going to add, I think one of the challenges that I've noticed for children is sometimes you don't want to invite anybody into your own home. You don't perhaps want to invite your friends in to witness a house that's very dirty because you have a parent who is registered blind and can't see the dirt in the household, or you perhaps don't want your peers to see a sibling who has multiple needs or a disability that might be unpalatable for your friends to see. And I think there is that stigma, isn't it, about not being able to leave, but also not allowing people in.
What are some of the kind of misconceptions around young carers that you find? And how can we kind of help to overcome some of those stereotypes?
I think young carers can fall into a number of different categories. You have some children who are caring, have caring responsibilities and very proud to be young carers and really want to support family members. But they also want to be recognised that they have those caring responsibilities. And then you have other children at the opposite end of the spectrum who don't want to be considered different in any way, shape or form, and perhaps don't even want to be identified as a young carer because they don't want to be seen to be different. And then you've got everything in between as well. And I think it's really important that we hear the voice of our young carers and hear what they want and how they want to be supported and how they do or don't want to be recognised.
And do you see any sort of mental health implications for children, young people who are caring?
Yes, absolutely. I think it has a huge emotional impact, which can obviously further impact on their mental well-being, basic anxiety. But also, if a parent perhaps is very much taken up with the care of another child in the household or a partner in the household, is that children potentially could become emotionally neglected.
I've come across quite a lot in schools, young carers that have the kind of what's the point attitude. So they don't feel like they're ever going to get as far as their peers. They don't feel like there's any point putting as much effort in because they won't have the opportunities that the others that aren't young carers, will get. So it's kind of trying to make sure that we understand what it is they need to be able to give them the exact same opportunities as their peers who, have more support at home.
I'm 13 years old and I look after my mum and my nan. So me as a 13-year-old, I want to live a normal 13-year-old's life, but sometimes it's hard to because I have to look after people and there's so much on my mind that I have to feel like I'm 23, not 13. Well, I've been very sad and I felt like I can't cope with things. My grades in school have gone down because of everything that overwhelmed in my mind, but I've had lots of help. I would say to other people, don't judge a book by its cover. Because I may look like there's nothing going on in my life. I may look like I'm fine, look like I'm having a normal teenage life, but actually you don't know what's behind closed doors. You don't actually know. Yeah.
Thank you. And we've kind of explored the issue a little bit there. And just thinking in terms of what is available for young carers in Somerset, what support's available. Suzie, can we start off with yourself in terms of kind of what support is available and sort of what that actually looks like and how people access it?
So for me, the first thing is that everybody who works with children has a responsibility for identifying children with caring responsibilities. So that's schools, the community, children's social care and wider children's services such as the Family Intervention Service. So we've first got to identify those children, and then there is a statutory requirement for children with caring responsibilities to be offered an assessment of those caring responsibilities. So once we've identified who those children are, the local authority has commissioned 5 respite groups. So we have 4 groups being run by 3 different YMCA provisions. So in South Somerset, in Mendip, in Sedgemoor and in Taunton. And then additionally in West Somerset, we have a charitable commissioned group, which is Minehead Eye. And it's very much a social group. It's an opportunity for children to spend time away from their caring responsibilities, but with other children that know what it's like to have caring responsibilities. There are a few charitable groups who get funding from time to time across the county, but those can vary on a year-on-year basis. But if I know about it, then I can advise as to what additional groups are available. And then we can sometimes access further funding for children through charity organisations such as STAR. And there's also Friends of Young Carers operating in Somerset, which have additional pots of money that we can give to children for activities. And the whole point is to give them something that they can do that's uniquely for them, that takes them away from their caring responsibilities.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned about young carers assessments there. What does that look like? What does that involve?
So, as I say, we need to take a whole service approach for assessing children who have caring responsibilities. A decision was made if a child is of primary school age, then a children and families assessment would be offered to a family to be undertaken by a social worker. Families can decline this because they may not want to have a full CNF assessment completed, in which case, if children are over the age of 8, then the Family Intervention Service will complete an early help assessment. And alongside that early help assessment or the CNF assessment is an assessment of what caring responsibilities actually are undertaken in the home. So what care are they doing? Are they physical tasks? Are they emotional tasks? And what is the impact of those tasks on the child? Does it make them tired? Does it make them lose sleep? Does it mean that they're late to school or can't go to school at all? And then it's very much an important job during the assessment to really hear the child's voice. What do they want? Who do they want to know? Do they want schools to be given some detailed account of what they're having to do? Do we need to involve any community resources so that they can help and support that child and their particular situation? Or do they just want to be heard and they want to actually keep it very much between the assessor and themselves?
Lovely. Thank you, Suzie. Mel, I'm just wondering if it's okay to come to yourself for a minute. So you mentioned right at the outset when you introduced yourself that you work for Youth Unlimited. Could you just kind of explain what Youth Unlimited is and the work that you do?
Absolutely, yes. So Youth Unlimited are actually a community interest company. So they're a not-for-profit professional company that deliver youth work programs in schools, in communities, in buildings, or directly engaging with marginalised young people in the parks and on the streets. They deliver lots of different programs and youth clubs around the Somerset area. So there are some running in Bridgewater, Wallavington, Puriton, Taunton. And they've just started delivering a young carers drop-in project in King Alfred School, which is funded by the Friends of Young Carers. And I think, as Suzie's touched on as well, it's funding which make these kind of things possible. So the more funding Youth Unlimited gets, the more they can provide, the more they can help, the more they can go out and help those children on the streets that may not know what's available to them. And I'm employed by them to deliver the Young Carers in Schools programme, which was commissioned by Somerset County Council and funded by Somerset Foundation. And the Young Carers in School project ensures that schools have the correct provisions in place within the school for young carers to feel supported and feel as though they can come forward and be identified within the school setting.
So in terms of the Young Carers Award then, what does that kind of entail? I guess sort of starting at the beginning, how would a school sort of apply for an award and what do they actually have to do for it?
Okay, so to apply for an award, you have to supply evidence to hit certain standards. So to get involved with the programme across Somerset, you just need to contact me and I can give all the details at the end of the podcast. But what we would do, or what I would do, is do a baseline review on the school and the provisions that they already have in place. And 7 times out of 10, I find that a lot of schools already have the provisions in place to be able to look at achieving an award. And it's just about maybe, tweaking them a tiny bit. So the award itself is broken down to a bronze, a silver and a gold award. So if we focus just a little bit on the bronze award, what a school would need to show to get their bronze award, they would need to show that within school, young carers are listened to, supported, and that they are, have a whole school approach on making sure that young carers know that their school is a school that supports them. When schools initially look at the award, it looks as if it's a mountain of work. But as I said, once I break it down, a lot of schools have the provisions in place. So it's just a case of maybe running an assembly, because a lot of the time, students aren't aware of what a young carer is. And sometimes even the young carers don't know that they're young carers themselves. So the more the schools can get involved and create a whole school ethos of understanding around young carers, the easier it is to identify those young carers. And I've done assemblies myself. I've gone into schools around the Somerset area and led the assemblies for the teachers or the leads of this project that don't feel comfortable enough to do them themselves. And we've had such a great response to just one single assembly. So schools that have maybe 4 or 5 young carers and after one assembly have identified another 3 or 4. So the bronze award is about creating that whole school ethos. And then as we move forward to silver and gold, it's about linking those outside, about linking the outside help, the social workers, maybe doctors and nurses, and just really signposting, making sure that schools are signposting the young carers to the kind of things that they need out of school. So any help that may, for example, we were only talking the other day about the 6 weeks holidays. Now, I remember being in school and 6 weeks, 6 weeks felt like a lifetime. So without these kind of projects and the teachers recognising the young carers and saying, right, okay, so you can't come and talk to me, each week in the young carers group within school, but actually I can give you this, and there's this leaflet, and you can go here, and there's this group running, and you can do this activity. And, without that, having 6 weeks inside the confines of their house with their young carer role, that can be completely overwhelming for them.
Thank you, Mel. I'm just wondering, in terms of schools being involved with the award, would they have to already have sort of identified young carers within their setting?
No. And actually, quite a lot of schools, when I initially engage with them, say, it sounds fantastic, but actually we haven't got any young carers to be able to get an award. And statistics show that is absolutely incorrect. So on average, so even if a school was average in terms of the young carers, you'd be looking at least 2 young carers per classroom. And then obviously some schools have more, some have less. But to have no young carers, that is statistically impossible. So I would urge that every school should be involved with this project, even if they contact me and I go in and do an assembly, or I give them an assembly template to be able to run an assembly that's very young carer specific. And I guarantee that they will, even in talking to me about what young carers are, it ticks away and they think, actually, this student could be, and actually, yeah. I had a school that did exactly this. So they said to me, I haven't got any young carers. And I urged that I went in and just had a face-to-face discussion with them that would take no longer than 10 minutes. And even by the end of the face-to-face meeting, they had in the forefront of their mind 3 children that they thought were young carers. And now, 4 months into the project, they've identified 7.
Just out of interest, how many schools do you have involved currently with the Young Carers in Schools Award?
So we currently have 6 schools that have been awarded bronze. I have another 3 schools that are submitting their evidence this week for this submission. So you get a submission deadline of every end of term, basically. And I've got one that's working towards their silver award, and I've got 36 schools that are engaging with the award. And when I say engaging, that means that they've responded with interest and they've had the welcome pack, and they're starting to work with me as how they can, look at their provisions and make them better for the young carers within the school. That is amazing. We've come a long way. The program's been running for around 6 years now. And before I came on board as a coordinator, there were no schools in Somerset, none, that were even looking at the award. So to come from there to where we are now, it is amazing. But I will never stop pushing. And the way I see it is there is no reason why every single school should be involved with this, because it is no pressure. At the end of the day, it's no pressure. And I do understand the pressure schools are up against with staffing. There's a lot of changes at the moment, and there's a lot of pressure for teachers anyway, so taking on what they might think is extra. But I am here, and my position is funded. It won't be funded forever, but I am here now, so I can help with posters, I can do newsletters home, I've been doing assemblies, I've been doing as much as I can for the schools and tailoring it to each individual school needs. So whilst I'm here, use me, get everything in place that you need. I want to, by the end of this year, be up to kind of between 80 and 100 schools.
Right. Wow. Okay.
So one of the things that I was just thinking as Mel was talking is we, as a local authority, can only identify young carers if we're told who they are. So in 2010, which I think was the last census, so 13 years ago, 1,700 plus children were identified as being young carers in the census return. And yet at this point in time, there's 408 assessed young carers in Somerset, which is suggestive that a lot of young carers are known about, but not actually ever referred in for support. So we can only support them if we know who they are. And of those 408 children that we currently have assessed in Somerset, 41% of them choose to go to the respite groups that are on offer, and they also have holiday activities in the holidays. But some of those children don't want respite groups because they've got other things that they want to be involved with, their peers or drama club or scouts or whatever it is. But if schools have identified them and they're putting in some support for them within the school, that's only enhancing the offer that that individual child gets.
I think it's important to recognise that the really key role that education establishments play around young carers, like I say, in terms of identifying young carers and about supporting young carers as well. And I know, I'm just thinking of an example actually off the top of my head of a young carer we worked with a number of years ago, who the school really didn't have that understanding around it. And this isn't a criticism of the school. They didn't really understand. And there were circumstances where, for example, the young person wouldn't do their homework because they'd go home and they'd have all those caring responsibilities. And as a consequence of that, they would then get detention. And that would really cause huge anxiety for that young person, not then being able to go home and have those caring responsibilities. So I'm just thinking, you've sort of talked about some of the ways that schools can help and support. But what are sort of some of the things, outside of, additional to the kind of the Young Carers in Schools award? What are some of the practical things that schools can do, or other agencies?
I think from a starting point, it's actually that recognition of caring responsibilities. So sometimes a team around the family meeting is actually needed so that we can outline to school the impact of the caring responsibilities on the child and how they can help as a school. So it might be, for instance, if the child is taking other siblings to another school in the morning, that child is given a later start time to enable them to actually carry out that function, or at the end of the day, the same thing. Or if a child is very worried about the mother who had epilepsy, that they're actually given the opportunity to use a phone during the school day to ring home and check in on the child. It's really simple approaches like that which can reduce anxiety and can increase the well-being of that individual child with caring responsibilities. So I think understanding is really, really important. And we have to have a whole family approach when we are going into homes. So adult social workers and occupational therapists, if they go into a home to manage the needs of the adult, I'm really keen that they think family and they think, who else is in this home, and have any of these children in the home got caring responsibilities? So, as I say, we can recognise and support them.
Thanks, Suzie.
Absolutely. And I'm just sat in the corner just nodding away to what Suzie's saying. And the schools are heavily involved, and children spend so many hours at school, and just understanding what it is their young carers need. Gone are the days where one size fits all. Every student is different. Every student's needs are different. So understanding what they're going through and what they need. A lot of schools have set up various different provisions, such as homework clubs that can be during lunchtime, so that they don't have to do it at home when they might be caring, getting involved with different clubs because they feel that they can't do those outside of school hours. So running a young carers cookery club, for example, and then they make the food to then take home. So not only are they engaging in a club that they might miss out on, but they're also making food to then take home to the family. So it's helping in that way too. So once schools recognise young carers, can listen to them and understand exactly what it is they need, sometimes it's actually quite simple to just tweak certain things to really help them. And we talk about narrowing the gap with certain things, and obviously all schools are privy to Ofsted reports and things like that, and just making sure that those young carers are supported means that they're happier to come in school a little bit late if they need to, because their teachers are aware and understanding. It means that they feel that they can. So then the attendance helps to improve. They're happier and more engaged in class, so less likely to be disruptive. And all these things, you put support in place, you listen and understand, those people just feel happier and healthier, and it just helps with everything.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just, we've talked quite a bit there about schools and the role that they can play. I'm just wondering, in terms of kind of the wider community, or kind of that multi-agency approach, I mean, how can kind of individuals or individual agencies kind of support children and young people?
The starting point is identifying that child. So we receive referrals in from multiple different professionals. So health quite often will recognise that could be a GP surgery or a nurse that meets with the child. I would like to see a lot more referrals from adult services, because at the moment I would say that is a bit of a hole in our provision, that we're not getting many referrals in from there. But also sometimes youth clubs. So youth club provision might meet a child anyway, and then they recognise in conversations with the child that the child can't always access the group, and it turns out the child actually has caring responsibilities and can't access it because of caring responsibilities. And that's one of the things that we can do to add value, is all the commissioned groups, as opposed to charitable groups, have got some funding for transport. So if you have got a mother or father who is registered blind and therefore they don't drive, then the groups can actually help with transport to get a child to that respite group provision.
Yes, and in talking about transport as well, I know that there are some issues around young carers getting to the youth group. So it might be that they can go to the youth groups, but it's that mum or dad can't get them there. So then how do we get them there? And I did secure some funding for taxi transport from a school in Willerton to the Minehead Eye, but that's run out. So then, it's whether you look at whether there's a volunteer that can, maybe drive a minibus, or whether there's other commission groups that can provide more funding. All of the funding, any funding we can get, it just helps massively. Any amount of money, because it really does get to put to good use. Youth Unlimited, obviously, who did employ me as the project coordinator, every little pot that they receive just goes out to the community and to the youth groups, and just make sure that they can help as many people as possible.
And we've actually had some additional funding in for the Commission respite groups via health, and it was very much focused at mental well-being of children with caring responsibilities, because of that unique impact that caring has on those children. So I think the message is getting out there, but anything that any community group or a church group or whoever can do to actually recognise that child as caring responsibilities, has an assessment being completed, has a referral come in order for that assessment to be done. This is all helping us build a greater picture of the needs for the children in the county. And one of the things that Mel and I talk about is, if we know who those children are and we can see the size of the problem, then there's more chances of us getting actual additional funding for that cohort of children. But if we don't know who they are, we can't make a bid for extra funding for them.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, so exactly that. A lot of schools say, but there's nothing, there was a time when we'd identify young carers and then we'd get a grant for those young carers to be able to do specific things, but there's no funding in place. There's nothing that we can give them. But the problem with that is, unless we can see a need. So, statistically, Somerset has a low rate of young carers. We don't have that many. Now, we know that is untrue. We know that they're just unidentified. They haven't come forward. The schools haven't recognised them, or the child hasn't want to be recognised as a young carer. But the more that everyone as a community, as a school, as, individuals, the more we recognise that and the more we can identify and the more comfortable they feel coming forward, if our statistics improve and schools can report on those young carers, then we have a need. So if we look at it as a geographical kind of, let's say we're looking at pots to give money and we've got young carer pots, which geographical area are we going to give the money to? We don't need it in Somerset because there are hardly any young carers. So we need to, really show that as it is, and really get the true picture before we can improve on pots and pots of money.
And thank you. I'm just thinking, sort of picking up on that. So in practical terms, if somebody identifies or somebody thinks, actually, yeah, I think this child in my school, or if you're a GP, or this child that I'm supporting is, well, maybe a young carer, what do they do?
So the first thing is we do need parental consent. So we need consent for a referral to be made for a young care assessment to be completed. There is a challenge for parents who are substance and alcohol users who may not want their child to be recognised as a young carer because of their personal substance or alcohol use. So that is a particular challenge that we face in schools and in wider children's services. So once you've identified the child, you say to the adult in the home, I think your child is a young carer or has caring responsibilities. We very much like to complete an assessment. And then the most basic early help assessment is all that is needed. A parent can actually refer their own child in by ringing Somerset Direct and saying, I have a child in my home who has caring responsibilities. And then what happens, a decision is made, depending on the age of a child, whether children social care will offer the child and family assessment or whether the family intervention service will undertake the assessment of caring responsibilities. But either way, that assessment will take place. And then we decide as to whether additional support is needed in a home because their caring responsibilities are so great, it's excessive care. And then my expectation would be a social worker would need to go in to see what support could be put in place for a family, or whether a short period of intervention with a family intervention service could help resolve some of those difficulties in the home. And then the icing on the cake is a young carer group, if needed, because not every child is going to need that or want that young carer group, and making sure that schools and colleges and community settings can actually support the young carer with whatever it is that's going on in their life.
And talking from an in-school point of view, so there will be a designated safety lead or a parent and family support advisor within the school that will be responsible for the early help assessment forms, and will be familiar with filling them out for various different reasons. And students can speak to them themselves. There's often a way that they can, especially once schools are engaged with the award, there will be ways that they can contact and let their teachers know without actually having to speak to them face to face, because some students don't feel that they can do that. So it may be that there's an app they use, or if they're of secondary school age, there might be a mobile number they can text. There might be an email system, or even just a Dropbox that they can fill out, what do you need help with? And then there will be someone within the school that's responsible for filling out the early help assessments. As Suzie said, to fill out an early help assessment form and get them recognised officially, they do have to have parental consent. And I think that's where we're finding at the moment there's a bit of a difference in statistics and numbers, because we have some schools that have recognised quite a high number of young carers, but officially in terms of EHA completions, it's not it's not that high, but because the parents don't necessarily want them recognised because there's that stigma. The word assessment scares people off. They feel like they're going to be judged or that they're going to have their children taken away from them. So as a whole, and certainly what I try to do within school is try and get that, stigma taken away, that these young people, we call young heroes, and we're not there to judge the parents. We're not there to, make judgment on how they live or what they get the children to do or what the children themselves may feel they need to do. What we want to do is just make sure they feel supported, just make sure they feel that they've got someone they can turn to.
Brilliant. Thank you both. That's great. I'm just thinking to sort of round off. I know in terms of young carers that you come into contact with, have you got any kind of success stories or kind of really inspiring examples? I'll start getting that question again, I think. So in terms of children, young people that you're involved with, do you have any success stories or inspiring examples of young carers in Somerset who have really sort of overcome some of the challenges that they've faced and achieved their goals? Are you able to sort of share any of their stories?
I think the first point I want to make is that I think all of the children with caring responsibilities are inspiring. A participation group in Somerset recently went into the Sedgemoor Young Carers group and they created a cartoon superhero figure. And it was basically a caricature that was identifying all the different needs that they had to fulfill within a family home. And I thought it was a really inspiring image that they needed to have multiple arms to juggle lots of things. They needed to have the ability to predict what might be happening in a household before they even entered into it. So I think all children with caring responsibilities are inspiring. So some children who have caring responsibilities have actually recognised that the skills that they have learnt through caring actually put them in a unique position to be able to go into particular job roles. And you quite often find that children want to go into wider social work because of those skills that they have gained. And the other thing that I have noticed, that we've got a number of children who have been involved in caring, who then actually are very good at actually fighting for the rights of other children. And they've wanted to set up young carer groups in schools. They've wanted to set up additional support for young people. And we've had a recent recording done by a young person who's just about to hit the age of 18, saying actually those caring responsibilities don't end just because you've become 18. They still continue, and you may still be in further education, and you may still be wanting to look to your future. And I think that single message that went out around the county has been really instrumental in getting other people to actually recognise the unique challenge of being a young carer. But as I say, all of the children with caring responsibilities are inspirational. I want to give one little example of what it might be like to be a young carer when it's forced upon you unexpectedly. So we have a family with 2 children, and their father had an acquired brain injury due to a car accident. So they were perfectly happy family with no particular challenges. And then overnight, their world was turned upside down. And they have a father who can no longer interact with them in the way that they used to. And that there is significant caring responsibilities for both children in that family. But despite that, those children are both actually looking at, what social careers that they can do based on that particular need that suddenly came into their household.
Thank you, Suzie.
That's amazing. And talking of an in-school example, obviously working with the schools across Somerset with the award, there's a school who really ran with the programme. So they picked it up, they contacted me, I went into the school, we had a school meeting. They did have a few young carers recognised, but not massive numbers, certainly below the statistical average. And they had a student who wanted to be the Young Carers champion. And so they kind of they kind of rolled with it and wanted to get the word out there with me. We did an assembly. They set up a young carer group, and they actually now all, even though they're only primary age, they all wear badges. So they wanted to be recognised. They saw that what they did was actually amazing, that they were super caring individuals, and they had, big responsibilities on their shoulder, but they did them with such grace. So they all wear badges that say, I am a young carer, and I visit the school quite often, and it's really lovely to see them. They walk around with, their badges on, and they explain to anyone who wants to hear about what a young carer is and what it is they do. And I hope that as time goes on with this project, that will become the norm, that people will say, yes, I am a young carer and I'm proud to be, and we'll wear badges or just happily talk about it, and we become more aware as a community.
It's brilliant to hear. Thank you. So just to round off then, I think firstly, Mel, just to continue on that, if anybody wants to find out more about the work of Youth Unlimited, or specifically the Young Carers in Schools Award, where can they find out?
So you can head to the Youth Unlimited website, so that's www.youthunlimited.co.uk, and you will find a schools tab where you can just link with me directly on there. You'll also find my email address, or you can head over to Facebook, and I do have a Facebook page which is Young Carers in Schools Award Somerset, and you'll be able to link up with me directly through that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mel. And Suzie, if people want to find out more broadly about young carers in Somerset, where can they go?
So I think the easiest thing is to email me, which is suzie.figg@somerset.gov.uk. And I will endeavour to orientate you. If you already recognise a child as a young carer, a very basic early help assessment, just identifying who the child is, that consent has been received from a family, and vaguely what their caring responsibilities are, we can take it from there.
Brilliant. Suzie, Mel, thank you so much for coming in to talk to me today. It's been really fascinating to sort of go through all these intricacies that may not be sort of apparent to begin with. So thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant to have you here, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Steve.
As always, we hope you found today's episode informative. If you'd like to find out more on any of the topics discussed in today's episode, please go to the SSCP website, somersetsafeguardingchildren.org.uk, as well as clicking on any of the links contained in the description. If you have any questions arising from today's episode, or would like to be involved in a future podcast recording, we'd love to hear from you by emailing us at ThePPod@somerset.gov.uk. My thanks again to our guests for joining me in the studio today, and to you for listening. My name is Steve Maccabee, and I'm the Training Manager for the Somerset Safeguarding Children Partnership, and I look forward to you joining us again next time at ThePPod.
Let's work together to help keep children safe.